In a small village surrounded by endless fields of wheat and barley, lived a boy named Arjun. His home was modest, built with clay walls and a tin roof that rattled during the monsoon rains. His father, Ramesh, was a farmer who worked from sunrise to sunset just to earn enough for food and school fees. Life wasn't easy, but Arjun never complained. He would wake up early every morning, help his father in the fields before school, and then walk 3 kilometers barefoot to reach the small village school. Arjun was not rich, but he had something more valuable: curiosity and determination. He loved books, even though most of them were old and torn. His favorite subject was science because he dreamed of one day building machines that could make farming easier for his father. His teachers often praised him for his sharp mind and quick thinking, but not everyone at school liked him. Some students came from wealthier families and looked down on him because of his simple clothes and muddy feet. One afternoon, the school held an important exam. It was a district-level test that could open doors to better opportunities. Arjun sat quietly at his desk, focused and calm. He answered every question carefully, making sure not to make any mistakes. When the exam ended, he felt confident, but the next day the principal called him into his office without warning. The teacher had accused him of cheating because his answers were too good compared to others. Arjun was shocked. He tried to explain that he had studied hard and knew the material well, but the principal didn't listen. "We have rules," he said coldly. "If you cheat, you don't belong here." Before Arjun could say anything else, he was told he was expelled. The decision was final. Students whispered as he packed his bag and walked out of the school gates. His heart sank. All his dreams seemed to vanish in a moment. That night, Arjun sat outside under the stars, staring into the sky. His father sat beside him, silent for a long time. Finally, he placed a hand on Arjun's shoulder and said, "Son, life is unfair sometimes, but if you believe in yourself, no one can take your future away." Those words stayed with Arjun. He didn't cry or give up. Instead, he made a quiet promise to prove everyone wrong. The next morning, news spread through the village like wildfire. People talked about how the brightest student had been unfairly punished. Some parents questioned the school's decision, while others simply shook their heads in disappointment. Arjun's mother cooked his favorite meal, trying to comfort him, but he had already decided what to do. He would find another way to learn. Even without a school, he would keep studying. Meanwhile, across the country in a tall glass tower, Billionaire businessman Mr. Aditya Shah read a message on his phone. A video had gone viral online. A short clip of Arjun solving a complex math problem during class. Someone had recorded it weeks ago and posted it without anyone knowing. In the video, Arjun explained the solution clearly, using only a chalk and a broken blackboard. Thousands of people commented, calling him a genius from a village. Mr. Shah was known for supporting education projects. He had funded schools, launched scholarship programs, and helped thousands of poor students get a better chance in life. But this video struck something deep inside him. He paused the video and asked his assistant, "Who is this boy? Where is he from?" Within minutes, his team found information about Arjun, his expulsion, his background, and the lack of resources in his school. Later that evening, Mr. Shah made a call. "Book me a helicopter tomorrow morning," he said. "We're going to visit a young man who deserves more than what life has given him so far." Back in the village, Arjun spent the day reading an old science book borrowed from his former teacher. He solved problems in the dirt with a stick, practicing formulas again and again. His younger sister watched him, curious and proud. She didn't understand much of what he was doing, but she knew her brother was different. He never gave up, no matter how hard things got. At dawn the next day, a strange sound filled the air. It was low at first, then grew louder. Birds flew, off trees dogs barked, and people stepped outside to see what was happening. Hovering above the school field was a sleek black helicopter, its blades spinning fast. Dust flew everywhere as it landed smoothly on the cracked ground. Students rushed to the windows. Teachers stood frozen. The principal, who had once thrown Arjun out, nearly dropped his teacup. From the helicopter stepped a tall man in a crisp suit, followed by two assistants holding folders and tablets. The man looked around calmly before walking toward the school building. "Where is Arjun?" he asked firmly. No one spoke at first. Then a small voice said, "He doesn't go here anymore." Mr. Shah turned to the speaker. "Then bring him here. Now." The school buzzed with confusion and excitement as the principal scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Mr. Aditya Shah, the billionaire, stood calmly in the middle of the dusty playground, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of the students and teachers. No one had expected someone like him to show up in such a small village school. Some whispered that he was a movie star or a government official, but most just stared in disbelief. Inside the school building, the teachers were called into a quick meeting while the students crowded around the windows, trying to catch another glimpse of the helicopter. The principal, Mr. Desai, tried to keep his composure, but his hands shook slightly as he spoke. "We must act politely," he said. "This man is very important. We do not know why he is here, but we must follow his instructions." Back in Nakarnar, the village, Arjun had no idea that a billionaire was asking for him. He was still sitting under the old neem tree near his house, reading from a worn-out science book. His father had gone to the fields and his mother was preparing lunch when a neighbor came running down the road shouting, "Arjun, someone is looking for you at the school." At first, Arjun thought it was a joke. "Why would anyone look for me?" he asked, closing his book slowly. But the neighbor was serious. "There's a big helicopter on the school grounds," he said. "A man in a suit came out and asked for you by name." Arjun stood up slowly, his heart beating faster. He looked at his mother, who gave him a small nod. Without saying anything else, he pulled on his cleanest shirt, wiped the dust off his trousers, and began walking toward the school. As he got closer, he could see the black helicopter shining under the morning sun. A crowd had gathered outside, and people pointed at him as he approached. Mr. Shah saw him before anyone else did. He stepped forward, smiled, and extended his hand. "You must be Arjun," he said in a calm voice. "I've been waiting for you." Arjun hesitated for a moment before shaking the man's hand. "Yes, sir," he replied nervously. "I'm Arjun." Mr. Shah studied the boy carefully. He saw the calloused hands from years of helping his father, the tired shoes, and the quiet confidence in his eyes. He gestured for Arjun to sit beside him on a bench near the school gate. "Tell me your story," he said simply. So Arjun did. He told Mr. Shah everything, how he loved learning, how hard his parents worked, how he had been accused of cheating, and how he had been expelled. He didn't cry or beg. He just spoke honestly, without anger or bitterness. As he talked, Mr. Shah listened closely, occasionally nodding or asking a question. When Arjun finished, there was a short silence. Then Mr. Shah stood up and turned to the school staff. "I want to speak to all of you," he said firmly. Everyone gathered around quickly. Teachers, students, and even curious villagers formed a circle around them. "I watched a video of Arjun solving a difficult math problem," Mr. Shah began. "He did it using only a broken chalkboard and an old piece of cloth. That video has touched thousands of people online. Many have written to me asking why such a bright student was treated unfairly." The principal lowered his head. The teachers exchanged uneasy glances. Mr. Shah continued, "I believe talent should never be punished. Hard work should never be ignored, and education should never be limited by poverty." Then he made an announcement that shocked everyone. "Starting today, Arjun will receive a full scholarship to one of the best schools in the country. All expenses, books, food, housing, and travel will be covered by my foundation." Gasps filled the air. Some students looked at Arjun with envy, others with admiration. His mother, who had followed him to the school, wiped her eyes with the corner of her sari. His father, who had just arrived from the fields, stood frozen in place, unable to believe what he was hearing. But Mr. Shah wasn't done yet. "Also," he said, raising his voice slightly, My foundation will fund the construction of a new library, a science lab, and a computer center for this school. I will personally ensure that every child here gets proper meals during school hours, and that teachers receive training to improve their teaching methods." The crowd erupted in cheers. Children clapped loudly, some jumped up and down, and even the older villagers smiled with joy. For the first time in years, hope had landed in their small village, not in the form of promises, but in real action. Mr. Shah turned back to Arjun. "You deserve more than this school could offer you," he said. "But I also believe that your journey can inspire others. Will you accept this opportunity?" Arjun swallowed hard. His voice trembled slightly as he answered, "Yes, sir. Thank you." Later that afternoon, Mr. Shah and his team left in the helicopter, waving goodbye as it lifted into the sky. The villagers stood together, watching until the aircraft disappeared over the horizon. Arjun remained quiet, deep in thought. His life had changed in ways he couldn't yet understand. That night, his family sat together under the stars. His father placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "This is your chance, son, don't waste it." Arjun nodded. "I won't," he promised. In the days that followed, preparations for Arjun's move to the city began. He received new clothes, books, and supplies for his new school. The village held a small celebration in his honor, where elders blessed him and children sang songs of hope. Even the former principal, Mr. Desai, came to wish him luck, though his apology was quiet and sincere. As the day of departure approached, Arjun packed his few belongings carefully. He took with him his favorite notebook, the one where he had written all his questions and ideas, and the old science book that had once been his only companion. On the morning of his journey, he hugged his parents tightly. "Take care," his mother whispered. "And remember who you are." Arjun stepped onto the bus that would take him to the city, his heart full of dreams and determination. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that he had already proven something important. He could rise above any challenge if he believed in himself. As the bus rolled away, kicking up dust behind it, the village faded into the distance. But Arjun carried its spirit with him. He was no longer just the farmer's son who had been unfairly expelled. He was now a young man with a future worth fighting for. Arjun arrived in the city after a long journey filled with new sights, sounds, and smells. The bus ride had taken him far from the quiet fields of his village into the heart of a place that never seemed to sleep. Tall buildings stretched toward the sky like trees made of glass and steel. Cars zoomed past in every direction, horns blaring like wild animals. People moved fast, heads down, earphones in their ears. Arjun held his small bag tightly as he stepped off the bus, feeling both excited and nervous. A man in a uniform greeted him by name and guided him to a waiting car. "Welcome to the city," he said with a smile. Arjun nodded but didn't speak much. He was too busy looking around, trying to take it all in. The car drove through wide roads lined with shops, restaurants, and glowing billboards. Everything was so different from the simple life he had known back home. The academy where Arjun would now study was located on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by green lawns and tall gates. As the car pulled up, Arjun saw students dressed in neat uniforms walking in groups, chatting and laughing. Some carried expensive bags, others looked at phones with shiny screens. He felt out of place already, wearing clothes that were clean but not fancy. A teacher met him at the entrance and introduced herself as Ms. Rao, the head of student affairs. She handed him a schedule, a map of the campus, and a small welcome packet. "You'll be staying in the dorms for now," she explained. "Your scholarship covers everything, books, meals, and even your own laptop." Arjun's eyes widened. A laptop? He had only used one once before, during a school trip years ago. He thanked her softly, still overwhelmed by everything. His room, in the dormitory, was small but tidy. Bed, desk, chair, and a window that looked out over the courtyard. He placed his belongings carefully on the shelf and sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, he just breathed. He had dreamed of this opportunity for so long, and now it was real. The next day, classes began. Arjun walked into the science lab with a mix of excitement and fear. Students turned to look at him, some curiously, others with indifference. He took a seat at the back and listened closely as the teacher explained complex formulas on the digital board. He understood most of it, but there were gaps in his knowledge compared to others. Many of his classmates had been studying with the latest tools and resources for years. Arjun realized he had a lot to catch up on. At lunchtime, he found a quiet spot under a tree outside and ate his meal alone. Students passed by talking about movies, parties, and places he had never heard of. He tried not to feel left out, but sometimes he did. At night, when everyone else was playing games or watching videos on their phones, he stayed up late reading old textbooks borrowed from the library, determined to bridge the gap between himself and the rest. One afternoon, during a group project, Arjun was paired with 3 other students. They were quick to judge him based on how he spoke and what he wore. "You don't even know how to use the simulation software?" one of them asked, clearly annoyed. Arjun shook his head. "No, I've never seen it before." The others exchanged glances but eventually helped him learn. Despite the challenges, Arjun refused to give up. He asked questions in class, stayed after lessons to talk to teachers, and practiced problems until his fingers ached. Slowly, he started catching on. His hard work began to show in his test scores. By the end of the first term, he was ranked among the top 10 in his class, an achievement no one had expected. But success came with its own pressures. Other students started noticing him more, some with envy, others with respect. A few tried to copy his notes while others mocked him behind his back, calling him the village boy who acted smart. Still, Arjun remained focused. He reminded himself why he had come here, not to impress anyone, but to build a better future. Outside of school, life continued to change for him. He got his first email account, learned how to use online learning platforms, and even made a few friends who respected his dedication. One of them, a girl named Neha, often invited him to study groups and shared her notes without hesitation. "You're not behind because you're not smart," she told him once. "You're behind because you never had the same chance, but now you do." Arjun smiled at that. He knew she was right, and with each passing week he grew more confident. His accent remained different, his background unique, but his mind was sharp, and his drive stronger than ever. Back in his village, news of Arjun's progress reached his parents through letters and occasional phone calls. His father read every word with pride, showing the letters to neighbors who asked about his son. His mother kept them safely tucked away in an old box, alongside photos and keepsakes. In the city, Arjun was no longer just the farmer's son who had once been expelled. He was now a student who earned his place through hard work and resilience. He had faced judgment, doubt, and loneliness, but he had also found purpose, friendship, and hope. As the months passed, his confidence grew. He entered competitions, joined science fairs, and even gave a presentation on renewable energy that impressed his teachers. He wasn't perfect. He still struggled with certain subjects and sometimes felt like an outsider. But he never stopped pushing forward, and, slowly, those who had doubted him began to see the truth. Talent doesn't depend on wealth or background. It depends on effort, belief, and the courage to keep going, even when the world seems against you. Arjun had that courage. Every morning he reminded himself of where he came from and why he was here. He remembered the fields, the broken chalkboard, the unfair expulsion, and the helicopter that changed everything. And he knew that his journey was just getting started. Arjun's second year at the academy was even more demanding than the first. The courses became harder, the projects more complex, and the competition fiercer. But he had changed too. He no longer felt like an outsider trying to keep up. He was now a student who belonged, not because of where he came from, but because of what he could do. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in orange and pink, Arjun sat alone in the library, working on a physics assignment. His laptop glowed softly in front of him, filled with graphs and calculations. He was so focused that he didn't notice Neha approaching until she dropped into the seat beside him. "You've been here since lunch," she said. placing a bottle of water in front of him. "When was the last time you ate something?" Arjun looked up and smiled. "I'm fine," he said. "Just trying to finish this before tomorrow." Neha rolled her eyes. "You always say that. Come on, let's go get something to eat. You can't think straight if you're starving." He hesitated for a moment but then closed his laptop and followed her out. They walked through the quiet campus paths toward the cafeteria, passing students laughing and chatting under the trees. As they walked, Neha suddenly asked, "Have you thought about applying for the national science competition next month?" Arjun blinked. "The one with the top students from all over the country?" She nodded. "Yes, and I know you can do it. You've already proven yourself here. You just need to believe it." Arjun wasn't sure. The competition was known for being extremely tough. Only the best minds got selected, and most of them had years of experience in research and development. He had come a long way, but did he really belong among them? Later that night, he lay awake in bed thinking about Neha's words. He remembered how far he had come, from a village school with broken benches to an academy filled with smart, ambitious students. He had faced doubt, judgment, and loneliness, but he had never given up. If he wanted to grow, he had to challenge himself. The next morning, he went to Ms. Rao's office and signed up for the competition. Preparation began immediately. Students formed teams or worked alone, diving deep into their chosen topics. Arjun chose renewable energy, something close to his heart. He had seen how hard his father worked in the fields, how unpredictable the weather was, and how expensive electricity could be for small farmers. He wanted to find a solution that could help people like his family. For weeks, he studied everything he could find on solar power, wind energy, and sustainable farming technology. He spent hours in the lab testing small-scale models, making notes, and refining his ideas. Sometimes he failed. Sometimes he had to start over. But he kept pushing forward. One evening, after a long day of experiments, he returned to his room exhausted. He opened his laptop and found an email waiting for him. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the subject line, "Your proposal has been accepted." He read the message twice to make sure he wasn't dreaming. His idea for a low-cost, portable solar-powered irrigation system had made it into the final round of the competition. He would have to present it in front of a panel of experts, including scientists and engineers from around the world. That night, he called home. His mother answered, her voice full of warmth. "Ma," he said, unable to hide the excitement in his tone. "I've made it to the finals." There was silence for a moment before she burst into tears of joy. "Beta, I knew you would do it," she whispered. "We are so proud of you." His father took the phone next. "Work hard, son," he said simply. "Make us proud." Over the next few weeks, Arjun trained for the presentation. Neha helped him practice his speech, correcting his pronunciation and boosting his confidence. Teachers offered advice, and even some seniors gave him tips on how to handle questions from the judges. Finally, the day arrived. The competition was held in a large city hall, packed with students, parents, and professionals eager to see the brightest young minds showcase their work. Arjun stood backstage, clutching his tablet and breathing deeply. As his name was called, he stepped onto the stage. A huge screen behind him displayed his project details. He introduced himself, explained his idea, and showed how his solar-powered irrigation system worked. He spoke clearly, confidently, and passionately. When he finished, the room remained silent for a moment before applause broke out. One of the judges, a famous scientist from abroad, asked him several difficult questions. Arjun answered each one calmly, showing not only knowledge but also creativity and problem-solving skills. Afterward, as he left the stage, he felt both nervous and proud. He didn't know if he had won, but he knew he had done his best. A week. Later, the results were announced. Arjun stood with Neha and other students watching the screen nervously. Then he saw it. First place, renewable energy category. The crowd erupted in cheers. Neha grabbed his arm and jumped up and down. "You did it," she shouted. Back home, his parents received the news through a video call. His mother hugged the phone tightly, crying happy tears. His father simply said, "You made me proud today, son." But the surprises didn't end there. After the event, one of the judges approached him. "Your project is impressive," he said. "We'd like to discuss turning it into a real product. Would you be interested in working with our team?" Arjun's eyes widened. This was beyond anything he had imagined. He nodded eagerly. In the following months, he worked with researchers and engineers to develop a prototype of his irrigation system. It was tested in rural farms and the results were promising. Farmers reported better crop yields and reduced costs. News of his success spread quickly. Local newspapers wrote about him, and educational channels invited him for interviews. He was no longer just the farmer's son who had once been expelled. He was now a rising star in the field of science and innovation. Yet, despite all the recognition, Arjun remained humble. He still studied hard, helped others when he could, and never forgot where he came from. Every time he looked at the fields in his mind, he remembered why he had started this journey, not for fame, but for change. And as he stood on the balcony of his dorm room one evening looking at the city lights below, he realized something important. His story was still being written, and the best was yet to come. Arjun's name began appearing in newspapers, on educational websites, and even on television. He was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and science forums across the country. People wanted to hear from the boy who had risen from a small village school, been unfairly expelled, and still managed to prove himself on the national stage. But with fame came new pressures. At first, Arjun enjoyed the attention. It felt good to be recognized for his hard work, and he used every opportunity to talk about the importance of education, especially for students from poor backgrounds. He shared his story again and again, how he had studied under a tree, how he had once been accused of cheating, and how a billionaire's helicopter had changed everything. But as time passed, the excitement began to fade. The interviews became repetitive, and some people started treating him more like a symbol than a person. Teachers praised him openly but also expected more from him. Classmates who once ignored him now suddenly wanted to be his friend, and the pressure to stay perfect weighed heavily on his shoulders. One evening, after a long day of meetings and presentations, Arjun sat alone in the library, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing it. His hands rested on the keyboard, but no words were being typed. He was tired, not just physically, but emotionally. He missed home. He missed the quiet fields, the smell of fresh earth, and the sound of birds in the morning. He picked up his phone and opened an old photo, a picture of him and his father standing beside a tractor, both smiling proudly. That was before all of this, before the city, before the awards. Back then, life was simple. Now it felt complicated. Neha found him sitting there, lost in thought. "You okay?" she asked, taking the seat next to him. He sighed. "I don't know," he admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, like everyone expects me to be something I'm not." She looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, everyone thinks I'm this big success story. They look at me like I've made it. But I'm still just trying to figure things out. I'm still learning. I make mistakes, I get tired, I miss my family." Neha smiled gently. "That doesn't make you weak, Arjun. That makes you human." He looked at her, surprised by how much sense that made. He had been so focused on proving himself that he forgot it was okay to struggle sometimes. It was okay to feel unsure. Everyone did, even those who seemed perfect from the outside. The next morning, instead of jumping into another project or rushing to meet someone, Arjun took a walk around the campus. He watched students laughing, playing sports, and chatting freely. He realized he had forgotten how to enjoy the little moments. Later that week, he visited Ms. Rao's office. "I want to start something," he said. "Something that helps students like me." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "A mentorship program," he explained. "For kids from villages or poor families who are struggling in school. I want to help them get the support they need." Ms. Rao smiled. That's a great idea. And so, Arjun began working on what he called the Bright Future Initiative. He reached out to teachers, wrote proposals, and even got Neha involved. The goal was simple: identify bright students from underprivileged backgrounds and provide them with resources, guidance, and opportunities. It wasn't easy. Funding was limited, and convincing others to support the idea took time. But slowly, things started coming together. A few professors offered their help, and a local NGO agreed to sponsor the first group of students. Meanwhile, Arjun continued his studies and research. He worked closely with the team developing his solar-powered irrigation system, making improvements based on real-world feedback from farmers. One day, during a field test in a remote village, he saw firsthand how his invention was helping. An elderly farmer named Mr. Patel showed him his crops, which had grown healthier thanks to the new system. "This machine," he said, patting the solar panel gently, "has changed everything for us. We used to worry about water shortages. Now we have power when we need it." Arjun felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was why he had started all of this. Not for the awards or the recognition, but for moments like this, for people like Mr. Patel. Back at the academy, word of his initiative spread. More students wanted to join. Some offered tutoring, others helped organize events. Arjun even started giving motivational talks at local schools, encouraging students to believe in themselves, no matter where they came from. One afternoon, while visiting one such school, he met a young boy who reminded him a lot of himself, quiet, observant, and full of questions. The boy approached him after the talk and shyly asked, "Do you think someone like me can do what you did?" Arjun smiled. "Of course," he said. "You just have to keep learning, keep asking questions, and never stop believing in yourself." The boy nodded eagerly, and Arjun saw something familiar in his eyes, the same spark that had once burned inside him. As the months passed, Arjun's confidence grew stronger. He stopped worrying about proving himself to others and focused instead on making a difference. He graduated from the academy with top honors, but more importantly, he left behind something meaningful. His initiative, his ideas, and the hope that other students like him could follow in his footsteps. When he returned home for the summer break, the entire village gathered to welcome him. Elders spoke about his journey with pride, children ran up to shake his hand, and his parents stood quietly, watching their son with tears in their eyes. "You've done well, Beta," his mother whispered as she hugged him. He kissed her forehead. "I'm just getting started," he replied. Because deep down he knew his story wasn't over. It had only just begun. Arjun stood at the edge of a large university campus, looking up at the tall buildings filled with students who, like him once, were chasing their dreams. He had come a long way from the small village where he used to walk barefoot to school and study under a tree when the classroom was too crowded. Now, he was about to begin his studies at one of the most respected engineering universities in the world. But even with all the success he had found, he still felt the same fire inside, the desire to learn, to grow, and to help others. The first few months at the university were tough. The courses were more advanced than anything he had studied before, and the competition was fierce. Many of his classmates had been preparing for this since childhood, attending top schools and receiving private tutoring. Arjun knew he had to work harder than ever if he wanted to keep up. He woke up early every morning, read late into the night, and spent weekends in the lab testing new ideas. His solar-powered irrigation system had already helped farmers back home, but he believed it could be improved. He wanted to make it cheaper, easier to use, and more efficient, so that even the poorest farmers could benefit from it. One day, while presenting his research during a university event, a man in the audience asked a question that caught Arjun's attention. "Have you considered expanding your project beyond India?" the man asked. "There are many countries where farmers struggle with water shortages and high energy costs." Arjun hadn't thought about that before. He had always focused on helping his own people, but now he saw the bigger picture. His invention wasn't just for one village or one country, It was for the world. After the event, the man introduced himself as Dr. Elias Grant, an international expert in sustainable agriculture. He offered Arjun a chance to join a global research team working on eco-friendly farming solutions. It was an opportunity that could take Arjun across the world, allowing him to meet scientists, engineers, and farmers from different cultures and backgrounds. At first, Arjun hesitated. He was still finishing his degree and he didn't want to lose focus. But Neha, who had followed him to the university, encouraged him to take the chance. "This is what you've worked for," she reminded him. "You wanted to make a difference, right? Well, here's your chance." So Arjun accepted the offer. Over the next 2 years, he traveled to countries like Kenya, Brazil, and Indonesia, learning how farmers there dealt with climate change, droughts, and limited resources. He adapted his irrigation system to suit different environments, making it lighter, stronger, and more affordable. Everywhere he went, he met young people eager to learn, just like he had been once. He started giving workshops, teaching students how to build simple machines using basic materials. He showed them that science wasn't just something that happened in fancy labs. It could happen anywhere, even in the fields. Back home, news of Arjun's work spread quickly. His name became a symbol of hope for poor students who believed they could never rise above their circumstances. Schools invited him to speak, and parents told their children stories about the boy who had once been unfairly expelled but had gone on to change lives with his inventions. One day, while visiting his old village, Arjun returned to his former school. The building looked completely different now. Thanks to Mr. Shah's donation, there was a new library, a science lab, and a computer center. Children ran through clean hallways, teachers smiled proudly, and the air buzzed with excitement. He walked into the classroom where he had once sat, solving math problems on a broken blackboard. A group of students were gathered around a smart board, watching a video about renewable energy. One of them turned and saw him. "Sir," the boy exclaimed. "You're Arjun, right?" Arjun smiled. "Yes, I am." The teacher stepped forward, clearly nervous. "We often show our students videos of your work," she said. "They look up to you." Arjun nodded, touched by the words. He took a seat in the front row and began talking to the students. He told them about his journey. Not just the successes, but also the failures, the doubts, and the moments when he almost gave up. He wanted them to know that greatness didn't come overnight. It came from hard work, patience, and belief in oneself. After the session, a little girl approached him. She handed him a notebook filled with drawings of machines and notes about science. "I want to be like you," she said shyly. Arjun opened the notebook and flipped through the pages. He saw sketches of windmills, solar panels, and small robots. He smiled warmly. "Then you already are," he told her. As he left the school, the sun was setting behind the fields, casting golden light over the land. He looked out at the horizon and felt a deep sense of peace. He had come full circle, from a farmer's son who had once been expelled, to a scientist whose work was changing lives across the world. That night, as he sat outside his childhood home, his father joined him. They watched the stars together, silent for a while. "You've done well, Beta," Ramesh finally said. Arjun looked at him. "No, Appa," he replied. "We've done well. You taught me to believe in myself, and that's what carried me through everything." His father placed a hand on his shoulder and squeezed gently. "Then my job is done." Arjun smiled. He knew his journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more lessons to learn, and more lives to touch. But wherever he went, whatever he did, he would always carry the spirit of his village with him, because no matter how far he traveled, he would always be the farmer's son who dared to dream.